Welcome to Peace of Mind Radio Podcast. I am Brian Ramsey, along with Isaac LaFon and Eric Douglas. Oh boy, this could be an interesting show. Especially coming from a guy in a sweater vest, which is so like 1990. Yeah. I don't know.
Cue the Morse code audio over that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, so on today's show, we are talking about. This was Eric's idea, so if you don't like the show topic, blame Eric. No, I'm just kidding. We're talking about things that what we have seen in our experience in working with folks up into retirement or pre-retirement, and it's just things that maybe they're thinking about or sort of get in the way of a good, solid retirement plan. Isn't that kind of way to maybe put it?
Yeah, just things that people do to get in their own way or to sabotage their own success, if you will.
Sabotage, that's the word.
That's probably the best word, yeah.
I couldn't think of that a minute ago. All right, before we get started, real quick, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you check out our previous shows. There's our contact information. Make sure you reach out to us. If you're watching us on podcast or listening to us on podcast, it's a really interesting show today. Phone number 502-233-9800. If you're out of town and you don't have long distance, our 800 number is 888-218-3466. So,
or you can email us at info@fwppartners.com. 2-piece.
There you go. Say I forgot that part. All right. Let's Eric, why don't you start off? And what we're going to do here is we're just going to sort of lay out a scenario on just something that we think is something clients get caught up in. It could be a mindset. It could be something that they do or they don't do. And we'll just sort of round robin it like we've been doing usually. And we'll just kind of go around the table. And you have so much written on your sheet of paper there, Isaac. That's awesome. All right, Eric, start us out.
You don't need to write it down if it's all up here,
That's right?
You know,
we'll find out.
It's obviously late in the day, apparently, so we're off to a fantastic start. That's all good, though. But I think one of the things that we had talked about before was comparing yourself to what someone else is doing or someone else's success, and then trying to compare that to your own success, or in most cases, it's probably lack thereof. So think about it. We talk about the mythical dinner party or the mythical cocktail party all the time, right? And you meet someone at a party and they say, "Oh, well, I'm getting X% return on my investments," and you're like, "Well, I'm not getting that on mine. Why am I not getting that?" And really, it's just you don't want to get stuck in the trap of comparing yourself to other people for a number of different reasons. Because for one, that person that's talking about their mythical return could be taking an extraordinary amount of risk, or they could be 10, 15 years younger than you, and they can afford to take that risk, whereas in your portfolio, you don't need that amount of risk, for example. Or your time horizon is different. The amount of money that you have invested is different. You don't need to take that much risk to get that much return. Your goals are maybe closer to being met. Or you just don't want to make sure that you're judging yourself without knowing all of the facts, so to speak. I'll give you one example. We had a client that we actually just had leave recently, not too long ago. And it's always unfortunate when this happens, but this was actually a client that it was becoming, I don't want to say a contentious relationship, but it was someone that wasn't always open to accepting our advice. We didn't realize until we actually had the meeting where he was actually officially severing the relationship that he had been talking to a buddy of his that was an agent at another firm. It should say a stock picker, to be very clear, but his buddy, who was an old Marine buddy, had kind of gotten in his ear about the performance of his account. And this was a guy who literally just sold his business and had entered into retirement. It's not like he's going to go out and make any more money. I mean, he has what he has at this point, and this is what he's going to live on for the rest of his life. And we found out that his buddy was basically pitching to him a stock portfolio. Once again, consider the year, right? It's 2020. How volatile has this year been? And when we actually started talking to him about, changes he wanted to make, this was going back actually towards the end of 2019. So this stock portfolio, I can only imagine how it performed at the beginning of the year when all stocks at the end of February and through the end of March just took a nosedive. Hopefully those have rebounded and his buddy's taking pretty good care of them. But he got caught up in being too concerned what the return in other people's portfolio was, or the returns that he was seeing in the stock market as a whole, and he was concerned that that's not what he was getting, even though his own portfolio, he didn't need that much risk in his portfolio. He couldn't afford to take that much risk because he had his IRA account, and that was a basically what he had to live off of after he had sold his business.
Yeah. So you bring an interesting point. We get this all the time. Somebody will come in and say, "Hey, my next door neighbor," or insert anybody you want.
Yeah.
Next door neighbor, my uncle, my brother. I mean, who knows it? Who knows? Got 37% rate of return. Like, yeah, right. Well, probably not, right? Most people, it's like a bragging, right? Their next door neighbor, brother-in-law, whatever, has come in and they're bragging about something. What happens when you brag about a particular situation? You're probably embellishing whatever it is by some degree, right?
Or you're picking like one account or one position that maybe you had a hand in, but definitely not the whole thing.
Right. So you're over embellishing the returns, more than likely, right? And number two, you're probably not hearing about the ones that are negative, right? Where they made a bad stock pick and it's now cut in half. So just be very cautious about, water cooler talk and having someone else say, "Oh, well, my rate of return is X," because they're probably embellishing it, number one. And number two, they're not telling you about all the ones that they didn't pick so well, right? We get that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you guys are pointing out is kind of like the FOMO, fear of missing out thing where, they don't want to have missed something they could have gotten. I mean, the downside is, we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, is our job for our clients is not to have the largest number. It's to increase the viability of the financial plan, make it more viable, guarantee their financial future as much as we can. We can't offer any guarantees, but try to ensure that they're going to be in good shape when they move forward in their retirement. And yeah, sometimes, is our job better to do a good job, like comparatively speaking, like make sure we pick good stuff for them and execute? Yes. But risk is one of the biggest factors. And a lot of the times to that point, it's usually a lot of misinformation. If something sounds way out of bounds, hey, look, every once in a while, so if they're leading with that, that's not objective.
Right.
If that's how they're leading to lure, then that's exactly how you might leave, is when that no longer is the case. And so, it's just important that what we're really trying to say here, the cautionary tale, is don't make decisions based on that. Okay.
Right.
Like if you would like more out of your advisor, like in that situation, if it's came to Eric and said, "Hey, how could I increase my returns? I'm hearing that there may be opportunity to increase my returns." It's not that Eric doesn't have the capability or doesn't want to do that for the client, but then you can have a conversation like, "That's fine. Here are some ways we can do that. We can go." That's called speculative investing. Mm-hmm. If we speculate more, we could get you higher returns, but you also need to understand how this might affect your financial plan.
Yep.
Because we don't have a dog in the fight, right? Mm-hmm. But our job is to give good information and make sure that if someone is wanting to go out there and hunt for that, we'll help you understand what that looks like and how you might go about it, right? Yeah. But we're not stock pickers.
No.
That's not a good way to execute over. What's the plan for 30 or 40 years?
Right.
Over a course of retirement to get that right over, because you can't afford a really bad mistake over a 2-year period. Yeah,
so kind of following along with the one Eric brought up, here's another one I get. Prospective client comes in, I get this, even just the water cooler talk, at my kids' lacrosse game, I had somebody come up and ask me this. But I get this, well, hey, I'm insert age, 60 years old, and, I've got $400,000. How am I doing compared to everybody else? I love that one. And here are the two examples I talk about all the time. I have a client who literally has, I'm going to say like a little over $200,000, and that's it. Outside of the value of this person's home, that's all this person has. Now, you may be sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, you only have $200,000." We've done her financial plan, and it's literally all she ever needs. She will never spend this money. Now, it happens to be because of her lifestyle, right? She just doesn't spend very much money. She has a great pension from her husband. And she has a pension for her husband, and then she has this Social Security benefit, and it's all she. I mean, she doesn't even spend what she makes now. Mm-hmm. House is paid off, car's paid off. She drives a 20-year-old car, cracks me up, but she just doesn't spend any money, and so that $200,000 is more than she'll ever need. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I've also done a plan. I did a plan for a person here in town, and they had on as $1.5 million, And you would think, wow, who, $1.5 million, I'd retire today. This guy's lifestyle, he was married, so it was a couple. Their lifestyle was so big every month that I literally said to him, there's no way you can retire on $1.5 million. You'd have no chance because he has a very good income. So if his income, let's say, was about $80,000 a month, okay?
Yeah.
So his income is about $80,000 a month. He only had $1.5 million saved. He's used to spending $80,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 60 net, 60-some thousand. Okay, so let's call it 60. He was used to that's his lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay, now you think, oh my, who spends $60,000 a month? Trust me, he does. We did a budget, and it's amazing. But he did, and spent it very well. But I told him, you can't retire right now because if you did, you would have to curb your lifestyle so much that it would be a devastating effect to your family because you would have to go from spending $60,000 a month to spending probably less than 10 to make it work, and there's no way you could do that. Mm-hmm. So we got him on a plan. He wasn't really ready to retire anyway. He had said, "Hey, I'm thinking about retiring early," and so we wound up doing a plan for him and got him on a budget. And it was difficult.
A slightly smaller budget.
Slightly smaller, but we did put some saving strategies in place automatically every month that got him on track. But point being, he was 55, 56, something like that. So had he come to me and said, "Hey, I've got $1.5 million, is that good for somebody my age?" Well, most advisors would have been like, "Heck yeah, dude, that's awesome, great saver." But for him, it's like, "Heck no, you got a long way to go, or a lot of decisions you got to make." So I say that because that answers to the question of, am I normal, or is my financial situation like most people my age? It's all over the board. You cannot look at it like that.
It's almost on the flip side of that a little bit. I've worked with some blue collar folks that have done a fantastic job of saving, probably similar to your first client, where they walk in the door, they're maybe wanting to retire, but they're starting to realize, oh, maybe I don't have enough money saved up. And you start to talk to them about all of those different things, their budgets and all that, and you start realizing, you do realize you've had $500,000. You were like in the 5%. Like you're in the 5% of Americans. Like you're in kind of the upper echelon, but they've never lived their life that way, and it's always been instilled in them to just save. That it's hard for them to make that transition to spend all that money.
Yep.
To figure out what they're going to do in retirement. So that's always very, very rewarding on the other end, to help someone realize, you have some room in your budget. Go take that extra vacation and do some cool stuff. So
yeah, well, I think that sort of leads. So you bring up a good point. I think that's another one that we wanted to mention today. Was one of the things that we see is someone that comes in and they say, or they have this preconceived notion of, well, I can't retire until I have X amount of dollars, or I can't retire because of this, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. And so in our sort of interview with clients in the very beginning, we ask them, what are you thinking? What keeps you up at night? Although I hate that term, but it basically is what keeps, what do you worry about when it comes to your money? And we get a lot of that is, I'm worried about this because I don't think I can do this, or I don't think I can retire, or I don't, it's always the negative piece of it. It's never looking at it from a positive standpoint. And I will tell you that I think part of this part of the negativity that comes out is the fact that what I find is that people haven't actually done a plan, so they just don't know. But they're negative. It's like, do the plan, find out the information, and then make a decision, whatever it is you want to do. And I've got an example, but what are your guys' thoughts on that one?
I mean, there's a ton of stuff that, other ones, what's the best age to file Social Security? We're also the best investment vehicle, right? Like it's all these kinds of things where they come and it's like that. I think in some people's mind, part of it, I think a lot of times they've never worked with a professional.
Yeah.
They might have somebody that handles their investments, or they've had a friend that they bought some life insurance from. A lot of it, in that first meeting, most of it's like, my brother, worked briefly in the business. It's not the easiest, and, he's doing something different now. But at any rate, I remember he did have a great analogy, though, for when people walk in. is that they walk in with and those of you with little kids at home know how this works. They come in with like a gallon Ziploc bag with 7 different puzzles, and they have about a third of the pieces for each puzzle. So they're like, I have these pieces, and I'm told I'm supposed to have these pieces, but they don't make one picture.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're just things that they've accumulated, and they kind of come in and they say, this is the kind of stuff I have, and I don't know, and then they realize it doesn't fit together. They've just accumulated a bunch of things that they know are good things, right? Like they know they should have some Roth money. They know that they should invest. They know that life insurance protects their family, but none of it is coordinated at all. And so what they do is they are comparing these individual puzzles, but they're never actually like thinking about how it all fits and what matters to them. Mm-hmm. So, while it was short-lived, he came up with one great analogy because I don't know what you guys think. Short-lived. Those of you that know me know my brother Caleb is like one of my favorite people. But it was anyways. I always thought, but I heard him say that in a meeting. I was sitting there with him, and I was like, "That's actually a really great analogy."
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
People know inherently the blue collar people you just referred to, right? That have worked, saved diligently. They don't know if it's how much it is. They don't know if it's enough. They don't know what's appropriate. But they've diligently done a bunch of those things. It's not bad. But what we do is like kind of clean up that puzzle a little bit. And actually come up with one solid strategy that works for them. Well,
they've listened to kind of conventional advice, and we need to probably do a show topic on this at some point, talking about conventional advice, conventional wisdom, right? Because there's a lot of that out there that is maybe half correct, but it's definitely not fully correct.
But not nuanced.
Yeah, but folks kind of like to your point that have listened to conventional advice or conventional wisdom, and they think that they've not done enough. When in reality, maybe you show them another way that's less conventional, that might be a little bit more tailored to them, and we can make things work. We can optimize. That's what we do. We optimize financial plans here.
Recycle the puzzle
into a new puzzle. Just take all those pieces and jam them together, right?
Well, I think it's one of the things that I've noticed in my career of doing this is I've got 2 great examples of people that have just come in that kind of have that I can't attitude, and the reason why they're saying it is because they've never done a financial plan, and then when you walk through it they go, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it. So one of the best stories I love to tell is a guy who worked here in town, worked at Kroger, and he had never done a financial plan. He'd come in and said, I'm busting my tail every day. I'm working 100 hours a week, and I just need to know what I need to do in order to save up for the next 3 years and retire. So there's 3 or 4 years. And I was like, well, where'd this 3 or 4 years come from? Well, I need an X dollar amount. And I go, where'd you come up with that number? He goes, well, it's just a number that I think I have to have. And I'm like, okay, perfect. So we literally did his financial plan. And during the results meeting, I walked him through and I showed him what things would look like if he worked another 3 or 4 years. And then also showed him what it looked like if he retired at the end of the year. Now, he had a couple of pensions from a couple of the jobs, and I said it requires you turning them on, so you're turning them on a little early, which I know, as we all know, pensions, the more you delay, the bigger the benefit. But I literally walked him through an alternative case that showed him retiring at the end of the year. And this was, I'm going to say, like in the middle of summer. And he literally sat there, and I didn't know how to respond to him. I was like, are you all right? I mean, are you good? Like, you're just, like, staring out in the middle of space. And he said, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I was like, well, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. I'm not making anything up. These are numbers you gave me. As long as you give me accurate numbers, I can work, right? And so he did. He wound up retiring at the end of the year. And the crazy story about that one is 6 months later, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And he fought it and had surgery and all this good stuff. Anyway, now he's cancer-free, or in remission, I should say, and has been that way for a couple of years. But he literally came in and said to me, had I been working in that stressful situation at that company, did I say the name of the company?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway.
We can edit it.
Okay. Company, it's not stressful.
I'll put Morse code over that one.
It's not stressful, but for him it was, whatever. But anyway, he was so super stressed that he said he would have never survived the treatment had he still been working and going through treatment. Because he said, hey, dude, all I worried about every day was my health. I didn't have to worry about going into work. And he literally told me one day that he thought that me showing him that saved his life. Yes, thank you very much. It wasn't me. I was just literally showing him the numbers, which he'd just never done.
Yeah.
He's the one that saved the money, right? I didn't have anything to do with it.
That's a super cool feeling. I've had a couple people kind of tear up a little bit when you go through that process. It's very cool.
100%.
It's very cool.
So I'll give you another story, which is another one of my favorites. A husband and wife come in. They had never done planning again, and one of the things that during our meeting we were talking about things they wanted to do in retirement. And one thing she had a huge passion for was traveling and picture photography. And she literally said, I'm trying to retire as quick as I can, so we've not taken vacation in like 3 or 4 years. And I said, so we went on, and what they didn't know was when I did the plan, it came out 100% success rate. So I added back in $15,000 a year for travel while they're working. So they wouldn't stop working. They could still travel $15,000 a year. So anyway, I put that back in their plan, and I literally I showed them the success rate. I didn't tell them that number was in there, right? I just showed them all. We went through everything and said, you're 100% successful. And they were kind of looked at each other, and they both kind of give this cheesy little grin, and I thought, that's pretty cool. And at the very end, I said, you want to know something? And she was like, what? And I said, I've got you $15,000 a year in traveling there. She literally started crying. And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. Go ahead, have at it. Travel wherever you want. Now, lo and behold, the following year is COVID, so they haven't been able to go anywhere. But we see that all the time, right? Where people get so stressed and they literally think, I can't do something. And then when they go through the planning process, they learn that they can do something. And they go, oh my gosh, I can retire earlier, or I can take that vacation, or I can do whatever I want to do. But you need to go through the planning process in order to determine whether you can do something and not walk around with this I can't do attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's another example of the difference between a plan and planning.
Yeah.
Like the advisor is going to crunch the numbers, going to be like, that works, versus you're like, hey, you obviously listened and understood what was a very much an important thing to her, and then went ahead and like put some things in. And we call that kind of like when people are getting like a tailored suit. You didn't know for sure that it would hit a chord like that, but you knew like this probably matters. Like we'll see if this matters to them, and those are always cool moments.
Yeah, well,
we've all had those in the meetings, and it's not rocket science, but it does take a lot of time, and it does require a lot of listening more so than talking.
Yep,
a lot of times. Yeah,
so listen, if you're listening to us on podcast, make sure you reach out to us and ask questions. You can come in and see us. If you've never done a plan, please come in and do a plan with us. Of course, that's we do charge for that, but we'll walk you through all that. But our phone number, 502-233-9800. Our 800 number is 888-218-3466. Our email is info@FWPpartners, that's 2 P's, .com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, there's our information. Just reach out to us, and you can reach out to any of us. It doesn't matter who it is. All right, let's jump to another one. You kind of brought this up earlier, so I'll let you kind of jump in here. But we see this occasionally, not very often, but we do see where someone comes in and they have sort of this kind of pessimistic attitude, be it towards retirement or just towards financial advisors or whatever. And I think some people have this attitude because they've had a bad experience with an advisor previously, or they've gone in to see an advisor and the advisor just tried to jam an annuity down their throat or some kind of high ticket transaction item, and they don't sit down to really understand them and do the planning. And so they really come into meeting a good planner with a closed idea, closed to ideas, closed to like the guy you were talking about earlier, not open to ideas, just very closed mentally. And so that's one thing I would just encourage you to do if you're going to go see a planner. And they really want to do good, solid financial planning, go in with an open mind and say, hey, these guys know what they're doing. I mean, it is what we do for a living. And we've seen hundreds and hundreds of cases, and not everybody's the same. They're all a little bit unique, but you never know when something might seem a little out of the ordinary. It's not your traditional mutual fund or, individual stock, it's a little bit something different. But the reason why we're suggesting it is because we've seen it work with other folks. And so I would just encourage you to go into seeing it when you go see an advisor, just go into it with an open mind, with open to different ideas.
I would even encourage you as well, and I know we just did a couple episodes on questions to ask your financial advisor, but this might even be something you could include in that as well, seeing if your advisor has an open mind to maybe trying some different things. One thing we do is we typically offer, we don't offer our one path. There's always more than one way forward, right? And so we typically offer a range of solutions or options to kind of choose your own adventure. We'll usually tell you which one we would recommend, but we're not so rigid that we can't help you on another way. As far as, hey, you can do this, you can take Social Security at this age and go ahead and retire. You can work a few more years. We can do this portfolio, we can do that portfolio. There's all kinds of different ways, all kinds of different things that we can do. We're always trying to keep an open mind ourselves. So we definitely appreciate it when, clients come in with that same type of an open mind and willingness to collaborate and work together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So anything you want to add to that? Sorry.
No, I just think like trust and curiosity. I mean, if you're going to come in and engage with, people like us, at some point you got to trust who you're talking to come back with good stuff. You'll know ultimately in your gut if somebody's recommending something that doesn't make sense. And I would encourage you to run if it feels that way. But if it's just because of rigidness and not wanting to be open to new ideas, that's never going to create a good environment. I know personally somebody just wants to come and dictate something. I'm like, if you're just going to dictate something, go find someone that'll open your brokerage account and charge you a management fee. They'll do what you say.
Yeah.
They 100% will do that.
Oh, yeah.
But a planner is there to build a relationship and earn your trust and make you trust them 5 years and 10 years later, more so than you choose to put a little trust with them up front. And, we always remain curious. I think that's one of our bedrocks of our firm is that, we have to, if we want to induce curiosity out of our clients, we have to lead with curiosity first.
Sure.
The willingness to adapt and find new things that are better tools than they were a year ago.
Yep. Yeah, so I think the moral of, this show is really about just being open-minded, being flexible, and making sure you're doing your homework to know whether you can or can't do something. Mm-hmm. Okay? And if you can't do something, there's always a way. I've always said that. If somebody says can't do it, I mean, you hear all these professional athletes say, or anybody say, well, I was told I couldn't do something. Yeah, okay, well, we find a way to get it done. That's kind of the mentality we all have here is let's never say we can't do something. Let's figure out how to get something done. And this guy right here is probably one of the best at it that I've been around. Is we had a scenario, and I won't go too much into detail about it, but it was something that we really shouldn't have been doing. But he literally was like, heck yeah, we can do that. And he found a way to get it done. Yeah. I think that's the attitude we all take is if any client that comes in that says, hey, I want this to happen, or I want to retire, or I want to do this, well, let's find a way to make it happen, right? Yeah. That's just the approach we take. So with that being said, here's our information one more time. For those of you on podcasts, our phone number 502-233-9800. Our 800 number is 888-218-3466. Our email is info@fwppartners.com. And I guess that's anything else or any parting words, I guess?
No, I mean, shoot, if you're having a barbecue and your neighbor seems to have an edge on the market, then tell them to come share it with their advisor. You know?
That's
Maybe they'll help your advisor know what to do, But odds are it might be BS.
I just got done saying we're open to new ideas, right? So,
that's true. That is true.
It's just something funny, if you've got somebody, maybe that's a tool for you. If you've got a snarky neighbor that loves to talk a little trash, like, great, man, why don't you come give some picks to my advisor?
Yeah, that's right.
Let them take a thorough look at your hot tips. But, anyways, it's all kind of fun. Yep. The main thing is there's a lot of ways to do this and, always good stuff.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, if you haven't watched any of our shows previously, make sure you jump on our YouTube channel or on our podcast channel and reviews all the shows that we've done previously. We're going to continue to put out weekly content, so just make sure you subscribe. I'll let Eric do his closing in just a second. But also keep in mind, we are putting out a second podcast. It's called Connecting the Commonwealth. Should debut the first week of October.
This Thursday, October 1st.
October 1st.
12 o'clock.
So if you're listening to this and it's past October 1st, go check out Connecting the Commonwealth. It's very, very cool. It's totally different. It's not financial related. It's more kind of entrepreneur, small business related. And if you are a small business or you're an entrepreneur and you want us to highlight, your business or your services, pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. We're happy to fit you in where we can. So with all that being said, Eric.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that little red button in the corner, hit subscribe, share with your friends. If you're listening on podcast, please listen, subscribe, rate, and review. Any 5-star reviews on Apple certainly helps us to get the word out. So we definitely appreciate you listening, and thanks for your time.
All right. Everybody have a good
Thanks.
one.
The information given herein is taken from sources at IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, IFP Securities, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors. This report may not be reproduced, distributed, or published by any person for any purpose without IFP's express prior written consent. Securities offered through IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as Independent Financial Partners, IFP, member of FINRA and SIPC. Investment advice offered through IFP Advisors, doing business as IFP, a registered investment advisor. IFP and Family Wealth Planning Partners are not affiliated. The information given herein is taken from sources that IFP Advisors, LLC, doing business as IFP, IFP Securities, LLC, doing business as IFP, and its advisors believed to be reliable, but it is not guaranteed by us as to accuracy or completeness. This is for informational purposes only, and in no event should be construed as an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or products. Please consult your tax and/or legal advisor before implementing any tax and/or legal related strategies mentioned in this publication, as IFP does not provide tax and/or legal advice. Opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs of individual investors.